Okay, so this is about scripture that found the Constitution. We've talked about this before as it relates to individual rights, but these are kind of the scriptures that the founders used, which I think you'll find very interesting. I didn't know before now that slavery was completely forbidden for the Jews to do in the Old Testament, and that in fact they would be punished if they practiced it. And it was tied to the year of Jubilee. God released all of the restrictions on the land every 7 years just to wipe the slate clean and to make sure they weren't controlling people. And so that's what God did with all the poor and all the rules and all and everything. It was kind of an interesting time then. So the Constitution that we have is supposed to be a balance between anarchy and tyranny. What's anarchy?
Being, shoot. I don't know what the definition is.
Anarchy is mob rule.
Okay.
People running over everybody else and the mob ruling things and the minority having literally no rights.
Yeah.
Tyranny is complete governmental control from the top and that people lose all their rights.
Yeah.
We're in a situation now where we have both. Okay. And the way that we have both is that politics has now become infiltrated into law enforcement. So when politics is integrated into law enforcement, you basically have a banana republic. You have politics running over the law, and the law needs to be separate from politics. You shouldn't have people prosecuted for a political purpose or have a branch of a government used for a political purpose. And when you do that, you actually reward anarchy and you reward tyranny, because you are basically setting up anarchy for political purposes and ignoring the law.
Yeah.
Both sides. And that creates tyranny and anarchy at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
What are capital offenses? You guys know what those are?
Isn't it like genocide?
Well, a capital offense is described generally as a felony. Things that are done against, the United States of America is considered a capital offense. Okay. In the original law that we have in the United States, and the original, our laws actually follow very closely to Anglo-Saxon law. The laws that they wrote, we pretty much followed a lot of that stuff. And the Anglo-Saxons followed pretty much the laws that Israel set up. So the original 4 capital offenses in common law, listen to this, were treason, cowardice, desertion, and guess what? Homosexuality. Those were the only 4 capital offenses in the beginning. Every other thing that you could do was considered not a capital offense against the United States, because every other thing, there was a remedy to the person that you committed the law against. So if there was a remedy that you could reimburse them, you could serve them, you could take care of it, that was considered reimbursement. So therefore it was not considered a capital offense. Since now we don't do restitution at all in the United States, we have hundreds of capital offenses. The things that you do against the United States, and you just serve time in jail. There is no restitution or anything like that. The next thing I want to talk about is a very important concept in relation to our laws, and it has to do with what we call natural law. Natural law, it basically is the idea that all laws that are given to us are God-given. All the rights that we have are God-given. And so if you go to basically what those are, oh, I lost my thing fell out.
I was thinking of, it's crimes against humanity, which is genocide.
Correct. Okay, here we go. So, believe it or not, all of what we call natural laws that come, all of our rights come from God. The next thing is what's called unalienable rights. And that's very similar too. Unalienable rights are things that are given to us and that are assumed that we have and come from God. Whenever you see a Supreme Court nominee tested, one of the things Democrats always ask them is, do you believe in natural law? Because if you believe in natural law, you're going to believe in basically the 10 Commandments, and you're going to be anti-abortion and all that other stuff. So that's why many people have been what we call borked. Justice Bork, who was trying to be nominated, got junked for believing in natural law. They would not put him in the court. And the same thing with the idea of inalienable rights. So the opposite of believing in natural law, which is the original strict interpretation of the Constitution, is a progressive constitution, or what we call a dynamic constitution. When you hear people say the Constitution is living and dynamic, they don't mean that you were to uphold it. It means it needs to change based upon society's needs.
Mm.
And that's why abortion was knocked down, because there's no right to abortion in the Constitution. And people wrongly are saying that, this is knocking down abortion. It's not. It's just saying that the federal government can't make any rule about it because it's not a law that's in the Constitution. So therefore, we're going to send it back to the states and let the states decide how each state wants to govern that particular right. That's all. That's all they did, was refer it back to the states. Same as the death penalty. The federal government does not require the states to put every person to death that commits a capital punishment crime. The states decide whether they're going to have capital punishment or not. Same as any issue that relates to rights. Only so the Supreme Court couldn't decide that a person needed to be put to death for sure for any capital offense because it's not in the Constitution.
Okay, can we talk about that for a second? How many states actually have capital punishment?
I don't know. It's less than half. Most of the southern states do. We do, but we've gutted it. We haven't put anybody to death in California for years. So even though California is a capital punishment state, no one's been put to death for something like 20 years. And they just wait on death row. So you can actually gut the ability to do it if you never set up an execution.
So is that something that we believe is wrong, right? Because we're not supposed to take someone's life.
No, we're very clear that blood pollutes the land. Remember that whole message we did on polluting the land? Mm-hmm. And that you should have capital punishment and there should be a death penalty applied by the government to cleanse the land.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So we've talked about this next passage a lot, and we're going to turn to it now, but I'm going to give you a new interpretation of it you've never thought of before. Go to Acts 17:28. What is natural law?
Mm-hmm. For in him we live and move and exist, and even some of your poets have said, for we are also his children.
All right. So listen to that verse. For in him we live. That's everything we do. In God we live and we move, which means wherever we go, we roam free and we exist. So that really defines natural law and inalienable rights right there. In God we live, we move, and we exist. Unfettered. And so that's the basis of the whole Constitution, is that verse right there. So how does the law apply then? There are a lot of people out there saying, oh my gosh, we're so cruel because we apply these laws to people and you need to keep your laws off my body, or we should have, more compassion for people. So if you think of the law for a moment, even though the law is done in the negative, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, and it has all these things that you shall not do. The funny thing about it is the things that you're not doing are to other people. So if you reverse that, does a person have a right not to be murdered? Yes. Does a person have a right for you not to steal his wife? Yes. Does a person have a right for you not to lie under oath when he's in court? Yes. Mm-hmm. That's the way it needs to be looked at in the positive, that those things abridge the rights of other people. So therefore, the people who are committing those acts and breaking the law don't have rights. They still have rights, but they're affecting somebody else's right when they do that. That's the basis of the law. It shouldn't be focused on the person committing the act and compassion on him. It needs to be compassion on the people that he's committing those things against. That's why in the death penalty situation, when people are being put to death, they hold candle vigils outside the penitentiary where they're going to put the guy to death. Misplaced compassion. Where people who think that the person deserves the death penalty Where do they hold a candle vigil? Outside the victim's house, who was killed.
Yeah.
Okay, so the main idea is that God made men free. Go to Leviticus 25:10. We'll just read 25. Go to start in verse 9.
25:10
25:9.
or 25:9. You shall then sound a ram's horn abroad on the 10th day of the 7th month, on the day of atonement. You shall sound a horn all through your land. You shall thus consecrate the 50th year and proclaim a release through the land to all its inhabitants.
That word release means to run free. It is also interpreted liberty. So you shall thus consecrate the 15th year and proclaim liberty through the land to all its inhabitants. And that was done on the Day of Atonement, to release any restrictions that any person was putting on another person. That word is the word deror, which means to run free, release, or freeman. Go to Jeremiah 34:17.
What does Jubilee mean?
The celebration.
So it's just because
It's a feast. Yeah, feast, a celebration.
year of Jubilee, each you shall return to his own property, and each you shall return to his family. Interesting.
Yeah. So what's 34:17 say? Oh, do I have the wrong passage? Oh no, here it is. We got it.
For thus says the Lord, you have not obeyed me in proclaiming release each man to his brother and each man to his neighbor. Behold,
Go ahead.
claiming a release to you, declares the Lord, to the sword of to the pestilence and to the famine, and I will make you a terror to all the kingdoms of the earth.
Wow. This is a covenant, this liberty. And he's saying, because you haven't done it, I will make you a terror to the earth. That's how important it was to not enslave your fellow man. So under that becomes the idea of the governing of the poor, because it's closely related to this. God did not like slavery, nor did he like the taking advantage of the poor. So go to Leviticus 25. And of course, our document is designed to give the most rights to the poor that we can. And our rights actually protect the poor more than they do the rich, apart from what you've heard. Leviticus 25:35-39.
Now, in case a countryman of yours becomes poor and his means with regard to you falter, then you are to sustain him like a stranger or like a sojourner, that he may live with you. Do not take usurious interest from him, but revere your God, that your countryman may live with you. You shall not give him your silver at interest, nor your food for gain. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan and to be your God. If a countryman of yours becomes so poor with regard to you that he sells himself to you, you shall not subject him into a slave service.
There it is, clearly forbidden slavery. And of course, it gives the idea that the nation was to sustain a person who was poor. So although we have welfare laws, there are people saying, well, there's really no basis for it. Actually, there is a basis for it because it has to do with the general welfare of society. So in this particular case, this was given to the land of Israel, and it's a command of the nation. So in this sense, we do have the command to sustain the poor. There, it's in there. And that was under the idea that that's part of his freedom, a guarantee that a nation would sustain him, which also continued in the New Testament, that you are as weak as your weakest person in the body of Christ, and that person needs to be sustained by the whole body. So that concept continued, basically, in the New Testament. So go to Isaiah 61:1-2. What is ultimate freedom? What is true freedom?
The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the afflicted. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to captives and freedom to prisoners, to proclaim the favorable. Oh yeah, that was it.
Who quoted that passage in the New Testament? When Jesus opened up his ministry in the synagogue, he opened to this passage and read it. And he basically said, I am he who's going to do this. So Jesus basically said that he's going to proclaim liberty to captives and the freedoms to prisoners. So ultimately, the only real thing that creates real freedom in reality is salvation, freedom and liberty to all the inalienable rights. When a person practices sin, the Bible says that they are a slave to sin. So you actually are in slavery, regardless of whether you have the Constitution, when you're living in sin. You're actually a slave to sin. You can't possibly have spiritual freedom in the real sense. And that's why we have rights and laws that govern people, all people, who also don't have spiritual liberty.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So the power is vested in the people, even in our Constitution. It's vested in the people. The people are the government. Disputes were decided mostly by the people. Go to Exodus chapter 18. And read verses 13 through 26.
Yeah.
13 to 26, you said? It came about the next day that Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood about Moses from the morning until evening. Now, when Moses' father-in-law saw that all that he was doing for the people, he said, "What is this thing you're doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge, and all the people stand about from you morning until evening?" Moses said to his father-in-law, "Because the people come to me and inquire of God. When they have a dispute, it comes to me, and I judge between a man and his neighbor and make known the statutes of God and his laws." Moses' father-in-law said to him, "The thing you're doing is not good. You will surely wear out both yourself and these people who are with you, for the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone. Now listen to me. I will give you counsel, and God be with you. You be the people's representative before God, and you bring the disputes to God. Then teach them the statutes and the laws, and make known to them the way which they are to walk and the work that they are to do. Furthermore, you shall select out of all the people able men who fear God, men of truth, those who hate dishonest gain, and you shall place these over them as leaders of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. Let them judge the people at all times. Let it be that every major dispute they will bring to you, but every minor dispute they themselves will judge. So it will be easier for you, and they will bear the burden with you. If you do this thing, and God so commands you, then you'll be able to endure, and all these people will go to their place in peace." So Moses, yeah,
There is the governance of the people right there.
yeah, all the judges of the people.
Yeah. And it broke out from the leaders, where it starts with the 70, which is the Sanhedrin, which was later called the Sanhedrin. Right here wasn't really set up, but it says here, you will set up leaders of thousands. So there would be main leaders of thousands, and then there would be leaders of hundreds, and there would be leaders of 50s, and then leaders of tens. In the New Testament, you couldn't start a synagogue unless you had 10 people. That's based upon this passage right here. So therefore, the actual basis of governance is based in the people, right? And that's what the Constitution knew this when it wrote all this stuff down. The people consented to the laws. Look at Exodus 19:8. All the people answered together and said, "All that the Lord has spoken, we will do." And Moses brought back the words of the people to the Lord. Period. They consented. The governed consented. And I'm in the middle of the Bible study, so I can't talk right now. Okay, bye. Okay, so, and then Chronicles 10:16 says pretty much the same thing, but go to Matthew 20:25. That was Sam.
But Jesus called them to himself and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great men exercise authority over them." Next one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it not this way among you? But whoever wishes to become great among you shall be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you shall be your slave.
Right. So that's where we got the idea that when you go to service, you serve people in government. That comes from this verse. And the idea that no one was supposed to rule with great authority over other people. That was never the way that God designed it. So the divine right of kings, which was something that was in Europe, basically placed these laws over the Anglo-Saxons, and then all of Europe ruled with the divine right of a king, which meant whatever the king says is God's law, which is backwards. And they based that on the kingship of the Old Testament, which God never wanted in the first place.
Mm.
And then the next thing is that God's law applies to all citizens and non-citizens. Now, does that work that way in the United States?
No.
No. The laws have been changed. Actually, illegal aliens get more rights than regular American citizens. When we take people for foreign crimes, we put them in, offshore, so we can treat them differently and basically punish them and torture them, which is what we did in Guantanamo Bay. You can't change moral law or legislate it to favor anyone. Go to Leviticus 25 again. Leviticus 25 is the main passage for all of the stuff that we're talking about here. Leviticus, is that right? That might not be the one I was looking at. That is not exactly what I was looking for. It basically, what I was looking for is the passage where it says that you shall treat the foreigner the same as, and apply the laws the same to him as to yourselves. You should not treat him any differently. And that is not what I am finding here. So sorry, I'll have to find that passage and get it to you.
Okay.
And then lastly, the effects of immoral rule. Proverbs 29:2. When the righteous increase, the people rejoice. When a wicked man rules, people groan. And that's what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Proverbs 29:2.
Proverbs 29:2.
So when you actually look at the basis for what makes people happy, the Constitution says that we have right to life and the pursuit of happiness. What's the other one? Forgot the three. We have a right to
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So when you look at life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness from a secular point of view, what comes to mind as the most important thing in that, from a secular point of view? Because the Constitution was written for the whole nation, which included people that would be secular, not people necessarily that would love God. They knew that not everybody would love God. So when they wrote that every man has a right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, what do you think primarily was in mind?
Pursuit
of happiness.
What?
The pursuit of happiness.
And what do secular people, when they pursue life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, what are they pursuing? Secular.
Money.
Yeah. Right to make a living. Property. That it is prosperity, number one, that makes the nation run. What's the number one issue in the economy right now? The number one issue that's causing the polls to be bad on Biden? It's money.
Inflation.
Number one, the economy. So the United States of America represents 5% of the population of the world, okay? Our nation has created the combined wealth larger than all of the other nations in the world combined. That's a fact. So when people try and downplay this nation or make it evil or make it awful or talk about side issues about how terrible the country is, the fact of the matter remains, we are the most prosperous nation that has ever produced wealth in the history of the world, which is based upon the secular concept of the Constitution. The idea that people have a right to pursue their dreams, and it's the only nation where it doesn't matter where you came from, your background, your pedigree, none of it. You can create anything and become a person of means and pursue those things. And that was the original secular goal of the Constitution. Besides the fact that the law, the rule of law would be instilled in order to keep people who went too far and broke the law to stay in line. That's the basis of, the whole Constitution that we live under.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. It's a short one tonight, but that was pretty much,
Yeah, that was great.
No, it's honestly very helpful and clear.
Yeah, I mean, when you go back and you look at the writers, they had other men that talked about these things, but we also took a lot from Cicero. Cicero's common ethics, and he was a total Roman non-believer. And a big portion, where I got all of this from is from this book, which is an amazing book. It's called A Miracle. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
It's called A Miracle That Changed the World, the 5,000-Year Leap, the Principles of Freedom 101. And it's an amazing book that where I got all this out of. And it gives you everything. The founder's basic principles. It has the 28 principles that all of our laws are based upon. The genius of natural law, the virtuous and moral people, virtuous and moral leaders, the role of religion, the role of the creator. All men are created equal, equal rights, man's inalienable rights, the role of revealed law, sovereignty of the people. It just goes right down the list, which is a pretty amazing thing as it goes down all these. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, which is never rarely talked about, is the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is the basis of pursuing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and not being harassed by the federal government. The 9th Amendment says, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. That means that we don't have to name every single right that a human being has. They're all assumed. And all those rights that I was just reading off to you, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 different rights that are not specifically mentioned in the Constitution that we have.
Can you send me a picture of that?
Sure. Do you want me to read them what they are?
Yeah.
The right of self-government, the right to bear arms, the right to own, develop, and dispose of property, the right to make personal choices, the right of free conscience, the right to choose a profession, the right to choose a mate, the right to beget one's kind, the right to assemble, the right to petition, the right to free speech, the right to a free press, the right to enjoy the fruits of one's labors, the right to improve one's position through barter and sale, the right to contrive and invent, the right to explore the natural resources of the earth, the right to privacy, the right to provide personal security, the right to provide nature's necessities, air, food, water, clothing, and shelter, the right to a fair trial, the right to free association, the right to contract. How many of those are economic?
A lot.
The majority. So when you go to the Ninth Amendment, so don't feel bad about making money or pursuit of the happiness, even as a believer, as you understand that wealth creates, wealth empowers and is the engine of the gospel, period. The Ninth Amendment, as I already said, those rights are all reserved for the people. Look at this one, the 10th Amendment. The power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited to it by the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. The states and the people are the same thing, according to the Constitution. People are originally citizens of their state, and those, all the rights that the federal government doesn't have are reserved to the people. How many rights does the federal government have?
None.
They have none. Federal government has things it can do, but it doesn't have any rights. What this Congress has done and what this current government has done is turn the rights of the people into the rights of the government, and has made the decision that those rights are to be dispensed to the people.
Yeah.
Granted to the people by their favor. If you want to be a contractor, can you be a contractor if you want to be?
Yes.
Not really. You have to get a license.
Yep.
If you don't have a license, you can't practice construction.
Oh, I thought you were talking about independent contractor.
No, I understand. But if you want to be a loan agent, you need a license. If you want to be a lawyer, you need a license. Now that's all to ensure that you can do your trade and all of that. But still, it's a limit on your right to pursue your own livelihood. These things have been, if you want to put a roof on your house, can you do that in California? No. You have to get a permit. And so these rules and these laws have been continually infringed, giving the government rights. That's a right to the government. Saying, hey, you know what? Unless you comply with what we say, then your property is ours. Any limit on licensing, any taxation is the same as ownership. That's a Supreme Court ruling. And so this is what's happening to our country over time. And the main one that's happening right in our midst is anarchy and tyranny is existing at the same time in our country due to political power being maligned and using political power to take over the rule of government, which makes us no different than Panama or places where politics rules over law. It's crazy.
That's a trip.
It's crazy that also there's like what is it? Half of the country who's just willing to flush all of it down the toilet as well. Because it's like, what is it now? It's like 50-50, isn't it?
50-50 what?
People who like basically Republican to Democrat.
No, it's Democrats are about 43%. People who vote left are about 43%. And Republicans are about 38%, and then the rest are the independents. And wherever the independents vote, that's what moves the parties.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, because
whatever the independents do swings the vote.
Oh, so if you're registered as an independent, but you're still you're still voting Republican or Democrat.
You can still vote Republican or Democrat. You can't vote in the primary. You can't elect the person who's going to run for a Republican or a Democrat, but you can vote in the general election. And that's why I switched back to Republican, so I could choose to be involved in the primary. Even though I basically agree with being a libertarian. I think it's closest to what I believe, which is just complete freedom, hands off everything, complete liberty. You know, the Democrats vote to get into your wallet, and the Republicans vote to get into your bedroom. Pretty much.
Into your
And
wallet.
when I,
Mm.
so I'm not suggesting that either of those are particularly bad or whatever, but the bottom line is you're now that we're in a place where we uphold all types of abhorrent behavior, and it's legal in the United States, and the best thing to do is to be a libertarian and just say the government needs to keep its hands off everything, and you need to be able to defend yourself against all the intrusions of the federal government. That's the only place to be.